part 2 on how to edit videos.
Good job.
Is that it?
Pretty much how to make killer edits. It's good to start with the end in mind, right? It's like, okay, what is the goal of this video? What message do I want to provide to the listener? What lesson do I want to teach?
The perspective on us as consumers might be a little skewed because the content that's presented to us is that high quality. They see that maybe as the factor of their success when truly it is not. Is elements like the message, consistency, time.
Content started getting Hormozified. You can go up in quality, but at one point it's like, okay, do I really need to spend 8 hours in this clip for the amount of people I'm going to reach?
When we joined the Hubspot network, the first piece of feedback that we received is like, cut out the background music. And I got so salty, but it's okay. It's okay. What's happening? All right, welcome back to Content is Profit, guys. Today we are here with part 2 on how to edit videos.
Good job.
Is that it?
How to edit killer videos. Honestly, it says edit killer YouTube videos, but we're adapting this for shorts and reels and all that stuff as well.
Podcast, that's right.
So pretty much how to make killer edits.
That's it. I just wanted to see if you were, in it. In it.
I wonder now, are you in it?
Guys, a quick recap. If you haven't heard the episode before, what's happening? What's happening to me today? Anyways, if you guys haven't checked out the last episode where we go over the first 3/almost 4 steps, is 1, vary your perspective. Number 2, pass the mute test. And number 3, clean your audio. If you want to find out more about those, go listen to the previous episode where we deep dive, and Fonzie has some good hot takes for, like we said, audio episodes, long form video podcast and short form content. On to number 4.
That is right. All right, go ahead. Let me actually lower this music right here.
Yeah, perfect. Bye-bye music.
Distracting. So distracting.
For you.
Shout out to the episode we did with Nate a long time ago. All right. Avoid side quests. This is one of the ones we're going to talk about right now.
Right, but that's not... Okay, well, I guess we'll start with that one. Okay, avoid... It seems definitely side quests over here. So avoid side quests. Focused on the main message of the video and avoid unnecessary distractions. Cut out moments that do not contribute to the video's main objective. Okay?
What's your comments on this? I'm curious.
We have a funny story where, obviously, the music that you guys were listening right here, this guy over here, right? That was part of the original Content is Profit. And it was mainly because I took inspiration on a radio show, and they had this little, track going in the background, this little songs, whatever. I thought it was cool. We ran it for probably 200 episodes. And then when we joined the Hubspot network, the first piece of feedback that we received is cut out the background music. And I got so salty, but it's okay. It's okay. You tell me. Do you enjoy it? Don't enjoy it? Let us know.
I think background music is good when it's paired with the feeling.
Which we're going to talk about that in just a second, right? But again, unnecessary distractions. We had actually a guest shout out to Nate, which literally he flat out said, guys, can you just shut down the music? It's distracting.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, obviously that feedback. And on the video element, right? If you have different things happening and the screen can be very distracting from the actual message that we're trying to, convey, especially on a podcast episode, if there's different sounds. If it enhances it, which we're going to go in a second, it helps. But like Fonzie said, this is a very clear example of a side quest on the podcast that might be unnecessary.
Yeah, I think there's plenty of side quests on our podcast. We tend to go on tangents, I feel like, pretty often. I think it's part of our show. That was part of our personality, but we always picked it up and come back to the main point. Now, if you're creating a very specific video, right, with a very specific promise, let's say on YouTube or a short, it's good to start with the end in mind, right? It's like, okay, what is the goal of this video? What message do I want to provide to the listener? What lesson do I want to teach? And stick with that. The stories that you share on that content, they have to be obviously relatable to the end goal, right? The facts that you share have to be, relatable to the end goal. And if you find yourself, going on a tangent on the post-production, don't be afraid to cut it off, right?
Yeah.
Honestly, when we edit some shorts, I was actually, helping one of our teammates with a part of the process that I haven't done in a while. And I was like, oh, look at this. Within this 1.5 minute clip that I get, there are 30 seconds that I can cut off that are a little bit redundant, right? Yeah. Boom. Not only that, but I can actually restructure this in a way, certain sentences, to make it more appealing towards the objective that I want for that clip, right? So again, just cut out the noise. That's pretty much it. I'm on fire, bro. Yeah, I'm on fire. 10 years I'm on fire.
Yeah, I think, if you have a second set of eyes or ears, right? Like, test that clip or that episode or that piece of video with somebody and then ask for their opinion, right? Like, from the outside, it's like, oh, I just got bored. And obviously, for a 60-second clip, it's going to be a little bit different than a full-on 30-minute episode. But I remember when we first started the show, if you go back and listen to, episodes 1 to 200-ish, you'll see that a lot of the beginning of the show was the backstory of the person that we're bringing on. And in part was because, personally, we were very curious and we wanted to kind of have that conversation. But at the same time, it didn't really serve the purpose of content is profit, right?
Yeah.
We never really got to the meat of, how people are actually profiting from their content and their business.
If not, the show would have been 3 hours long, every conversation.
Joe Rogan style. So yeah. I think,
I think this leads actually perfectly to the next point, which is edit your ads seamlessly. Obviously, that is if you have an ad or if you have something that you're promoting, right? It might be an ad for yourself, your own brand, your own products, right? It doesn't necessarily has to be a exterior partner. And I'm saying this because we're talking avoid side quests. But usually, if you have something that interrupts the viewer experience, like an ad, then you could consider that a little bit of a side quest, right? So how do you put that into the mix, right? I think Mr. Beast does a great example on putting ads into his videos, right? It kind of goes along with the story, and he keeps you engaged, right? Switching shots from the main story to him reading the ad. But while he's reading the ad, you kind of can see on the background the main story going through. I think that is very important. You can do that with your own videos.
Going off of Mr. Beast's example, he recently created a video where it's a 10-minute video, and there was no edit cuts. They did a full shot for 10 minutes, and it was pretty incredible and crazy the way that they did it. And he has an ad read in the middle of that. So I think that's a really good example of, YouTube / podcast. It's not a podcast, but obviously on podcast, it will be something like that, where he used the situation that was happening in the video to describe his product at the time, and it worked really great, and it was live. There's no cuts whatsoever.
Yeah.
And also to flip it, you have shows, for example, like Kill Tony, right? That on their end, they literally cut the show and go to an ad.
Yeah, but there's a very specific transition. It's not like a rough cut in there. He's like, all right, for those that are watching on YouTube, we need to make more money.
Exactly. So, different styles, right? One is a little bit more smooth. The other one is point, and here we go for the next thing. The point I'm trying to make is try it out. See what works best for you and your platform.
If you're not very comfortable making your ads seamless into your content, right? Like this, for example, we're talking about ads, and if you're wondering how you can turn your content into profit, you can go to contentsprofit.com, right? Something along those lines.
Listen to the 500 episodes.
Exactly. But if, we're having this conversation, we're interviewing someone, and we don't want to cut the flow of that conversation on the post-production aspect, we can look for a specific moment where maybe we're changing topics, right? And in there, we can put kind of a fade in of a little bit of a music that indicates the listener, oh, there's going to be a transition in here. And then you can transition into the ad. And then a fade out that does it. I also like that a lot for not ads specifically, but for conversations that maybe when you were having the conversations with the guest, maybe became redundant at some point. You started repeating the same thing over and over again, or maybe, the conversation stall and now you have to pivot and do something else. And there's not a very smooth transition in that conversation. In post-production, you can find that moment and fade in some music and then fade it out. And people will know, oh, that is the end of this segment, kind of like this chapter. We're starting another one. And actually, that feels very natural for some reason.
Yeah.
With that fade in and fade out of music indicating there is a new segment coming on, for some reason, and I don't know why, it feels supernatural. I heard it in some podcasts, and it actually makes it feel even more high-end than if the conversation just keeps going.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just the fact that you have some music in there added, and that just gives it the value of more hand. But again, now I'm going on a little bit of a tangent. So let's get back into that. I'm going a little bit of a side quest.
Speaking of which, if you guys are interested in, how we produce a podcast, or if you need help producing your podcast or your micro content, please reach out. That's what we do here in the studio and digitally as well. You don't have to be in Jacksonville, Florida. You can be all over the world. We're happy to help. @BizRosco on social media.
What a seamless ad right there. Good job. Next point. Avoid eye fatigue. Simplify visuals to have a singular focal point in each frame. Use smaller subtitles. Reduce eye strain. All this stuff. It's okay. I'm curious. What? Go ahead. You took a deep breath in there.
Yeah. So lately I've been working on a I guess personal project, of Bizros called The Football Show. You can go to thefootball.show and check it out. It's our passion of, the sport, and we started a podcast, right? And, obviously we've been doing this production and things and content ecosystems and all this stuff for people that want content a certain way, some people that give us full freedom. And this was almost like a clean slate to where, like, how do we want to actually present this, right? And, as we were... 2 nights ago, as I was setting up how the content is gonna look and feel, I kept leaning towards make it super simple, like one font, one sub, the shot that's already made in the studio, a little logo and not a lot of color. It's literally black and white, everything, like the logo, everything, right? And that to me was based because I didn't have a lot of time to actually do it, so it saved me a ton of time. It looks decent, and then I actually asked for feedback to our podcast mastermind, and everybody was like, this looks great, right? It's almost like refreshing, right? So that says a lot. It's a little bit different, and also it's almost like we're zigzagging, based on what the content of other people in the space are doing. And I remember the stage where there was a lot of clipping where it's superly overproduced with these animations in the background and things popping up here and there, and they were advertising this is the content people want to consume now. And at the end of the 60-second clip, you're sweating, exhausted, and you don't even remember what you just saw, right? Yeah. So I think there's a point in
there was a stage a few years ago when Hormozi started putting content out that the content started to get Hormozified, right?
Well, I don't think it was just the Hormozi.
I know, but hear me out. This is a full-on timeline right here, right?
Okay.
You had the simple clips, right? Gary Vee style, which at first it was more of the square-looking. It was kind of like a meme-looking thing, right? You had the borders at the top, at the bottom with your headline in there, and then you had the simple clip with the subtitles and maybe a progress bar.
Yeah.
And then content started getting Hormozified, right? You started getting subtitles with a single word with a pop effect
moving
coming
fast.
in and out super fast, right? Eventually, putting more elements, a little more visual elements, not necessarily B-roll, just visual elements that can help you see what the person is talking about. But then it became the next step after that was people started hiring animators, lots of animators, and they started having these scenes and sounds and super high quality, hi-fi, right? Super high quality content, which
$500
as an editor, I'm yeah, exactly. As an editor, I'm damn, that is so cool. But this 1 minute video
is it actually
easily took 8 hours to make, right? Yeah. Something like that. It's just so overproduced, and it looks nice in the eye. And again, the battle is for attention at the end of the day, right? People are okay, how can we get people's attention? And in that period of time, different editing became a little bit of a clutch, right? If you had that type of editing, it was different at that time. It was catching people's attention. I think now it's becoming more mainstream, and honestly, exhausting, like you said, right? After watching it for so long, I'm man, I'm exhausted.
I mean, not only that.
Once again, and you're exhausted now. You're all right, let me regress to actually pay attention to the message a little bit more, right? And I'm not gonna lie, I think you can still have some really high quality edits with the animations, but you can still make it simplistic, right? You can make it simple. I love the premise of supporting what you're saying with visuals, right? Can we somehow put visuals on the screen that are going to support what we're talking about, right? To you on the football show, you were talking about some results, and you have an image of the result that happened on the game right there. Very simple, right? You were talking about the performance of a player. We put an image of the player that we're talking about. And of course, with certain topics, it's going to be easier, like soccer, right? We have very specific visuals when we talk about, emotions and, content, etc. Like certain things is a little bit more difficult to represent visually, right? It requires a little bit more of creativity on the production side of things. But at the end of the day, you can still have high quality, make it simplistic. And I do think there is a point of diminishing returns, right? 100%. Like you can go up in quality, but at one point it's like, okay, do I really need to spend 8 hours in this clip for the amount of people I'm going to reach? Specifically at the lower levels, right? Like I understand Ror Mozzi that every clip that he puts out there gets a lot of attention.
Yeah.
Sure, like maybe for him it makes a little bit more sense, to do something around those type of size, like those high quality videos. But somebody that might not have the reach, I think the clutch is not the editing, right? I think they actually need to come back into our previous episode, right? And listen to point number 2, pass the mute test, right? Do you have a compelling hook, right? That if you have it in mute, can you get people's attention somehow? And I think just focusing on that, you can then leverage that to get people attention and not necessarily with crazy effects.
Yeah, I think because the perspective of us as consumers, right, might be a little skewed because the content that's presented to us is that sometimes that high quality. They see that maybe as a factor of their success when truly it is not. Is elements like the message, number 1, is elements like consistency, time, being publishing, right? And just do a quick research, right? You can go to Mr. Beast's new YouTube tool, viewstats.com, right? Not that we're sponsored or anything, but I've been doing a lot of research there. And go search your you'll find your go find and search your favorite YouTube channel, right, that you've consumed, that you like content, and go back to see how many episodes or how many videos or how many shorts are they publishing every single month. You will find out more than likely that the volume is higher than you thought, right? And they have been publishing for longer than you thought. So if those are the variables, right, or the conditions to sustain, again, based on your resources and the publishing pyramid. If you haven't checked it out, go to our site, contentsprofit.com, search publishing pyramid. You will see the episode. How can you achieve consistency? And sometimes if it's a team of 1 or 2, or maybe you yourself, keep it super simple, focusing on the message, and the production will come. And we were just talking about this, like the clips of the football show, like this literally started last week, right? The ones that have grabbed more traction than anything, and these are nothing crazy. It's like 500 or to 1,000 views. Is the one literally that have a message that might be a little bit polarizing for some people in that world, but they're not over edited. It's like either Fonzie's face or my face with the subtitles, and people are commenting like crazy, right? Like we have that engaging. So start looking for those indicators and start adapting it to your thing, and don't worry too much about that post-production, because it will create eye fatigue, and then you will see that balance.
Yeah,
right?
I think it's also understanding the role of the piece of content you're putting out, right? If it's a piece of content with a low shelf life, meaning you put it on your reels and it's gonna be shown to your audience for not too long, right? Maybe a few couple hours and then that's it.
Yeah,
like, is it really worth the investment on putting something super, super high produced? Now, if you have what we call some evergreen assets, right? Maybe the main video on your website that everybody that visits your website, they're going to see it. Sure. Like that is a video that is going to, you're sending traffic to it. Maybe you want to put a little more intention into those, right? And also you can, well, we talked about this before. Test, then invest, right? Like you can simplify your content, right? And you can put it out, test the message, see which pieces of content perform better. And then you can actually grab that same clip, put it, add more into production, post it again, and see if it works, right? Again, just always keep testing. But at the end of the time, understand what is the role of the content that you're creating.
Absolutely. Now to wrap up, right? The last one.
Last one.
It's a little bit of a bonus here. It's amplify key moments with music and sound effects. And again, keep in mind for context, think about the specific type of content that you want to create, right? But over here, it's like use custom sound effects like hits, risers, and atmospheres to enhance key moments. Differentiate between hits, which are sharp accents, risers, build-up sounds, and atmospheres, mood-setting sounds. And again, this article specifically was written for YouTube videos, but then there are podcasts also that are doing something like this, like Business Wars, for example, that we love. This highly produced stuff do a lot of that. I listen to a show called Planet Money, which I really like on how they do things, because the sounds that they put in there, they record as they're going on location to these things, and they record the sounds of like the door of the car like shutting, or if they're going to a factory, they're recording like the atmosphere, so you feel like you're there with them. But it's a very specific type of podcast, right, that again requires a little bit more resources to do that, and pre-production and post-production. So these are all elements that you need to consider when you're creating that type of content. And again, if you have an internal team, these are things that you can talk about and see how you can get better. But at the same time, with a specific show, right, how can you do that? Like in our case, that I do, that's my mood setting music, but I got shut down. It's okay.
Yeah, it's distracting. Take it off. I think that's honestly good. Sound effects is what distinguish, in a way, really good editors from other ones.
That's right.
Just
like that.
If you ask somebody, right, like, just a couple editors, and you give them a specific clip and be like, all right, work on this. Like, there's a couple things that I would evaluate. First, structure, right? Like, do they leave the clip exactly as it is? Or in a way, do they use what they have in there to move sentences around and create a more compelling hook, right? Or whatever, right? Do they take the redundancy off of the clip? So structure, very important. Second, obviously, I would look for that type of edit. How simple it is, right? Did they over edit, or did they actually put the right amount of supportive resources inside of that, right? Like, did they use B-rolls? Did they maybe create some graphics that they, to support what the person was saying in the clip? And then the next thing, alarm. There we go. We got an alarm here in Jacksonville, Florida.
Actually, tornado.
Tornado warning. Ooh.
Okay.
Well, let me... 1 second, guys. Chaos. Those are some supportive sounds out there for today's. On cue. So, right, things that I would look for on the editor, right? The structure. Do they know how to work with that? Then the type of edits, right? How simple. If they use the right supportive, visuals, or if they're over editing, right? Obviously, that would be probably like a negative one for me. But I think it's a coachable one. And then I would go into the sound. And I think the sound is what a lot of people don't do or avoid, or is very easily overdone. They can go in and just put so many effects with every single thing that happens, right? Like all those things.
That was great.
Those were, what can I say? But but again, sounds just help engage your senses. And at the end of the day, personally, I think the more senses you can put into a piece of content, the more engaged the viewer is going to be, right? Yeah. So if I already have the visual, obviously, I already have some of the auditive, right? Because I'm listening to the person talk. But how can I even get you more into the scene? If I'm showing you, some B-roll of a city, can I add some, footsteps of people walking out, right? If I'm describing a part of my story when we were playing soccer, right? Can I add the sound of an audience, of the crowd roaring in the background? Like things like that. I do think they distinguish like great editors from anybody else.
Yeah.
But you can easily overdo it. And in this, the period that we talked about where things were like ultra edited, like there's they call it retention editing, like that retention editing aspect of things with like all these things coming into the screen at the time. there were so many sounds too. I was like, what is going on?
I'm telling you, after 60 seconds, I felt exhausted.
Yeah,
I mean, I think it was good for me because I would just get out of social media.
Yeah, like, all right, I'm done. Yeah, it's overstimulating.
Yeah.
That is the word, right? It is overstimulated. So you gotta be careful with these things. But again, great content has some great sound design for sure.
Yeah, I'll say, think about what do you want your audience to feel, right, whenever you're explaining something or showing something. And I remember not so long ago, I went to a movie with Katie. We watched If, like Imaginary Friend, like the Ryan Reynolds movie.
Oh, you went to watch it?
Yeah. And it was a date night, bro.
Tangent alert. Keep going.
And I remember there was a few scenes where I told Katie, I'm like, if this had a different music or sound, I will feel in a horror movie. Like the way that they presented the visual, they put in like a playful music type of deal, but I was like, well, it's making me feel this way, but my visual doesn't really describe that, and it was like a very interesting feeling. And then I started thinking, what if this had like a build-up kind of like suspense music behind? I will feel in a completely different movie. And I haven't seen that in many others, and that was like really interesting on how they did it. And I mentioned that to Katie in the middle of the movie. She's like, "You are right." So that's a very clear example. If you have seen that movie, keep an eye out for that. If you haven't, I would love to hear your comments on it. Yeah. But for your own content, it's the same thing. Like we might be saying something in a neutral tone, and because we're building it up behind with sounds and a different type, it might be a playful mood. It might be a depressing mood or different.
I've told you that we should add different mood songs in the board
for stories.
So when somebody's telling a story and it's kind of sad, just like slowly fading that story.
Not that one. Like,
yeah, slowly fading that music. But at the same time, I feel like that would be kind of funny. Because it's unexpected. People would never expect it. But again, in post-production is ideal, right? Like
a person crying.
Yeah, you can enhance emotion. That's the other thing. You can enhance emotions with really good sound. Now, again, understand your content. For evergreen content, I think that is a good idea. Now, for a 1 minute clip, do you really need it? Maybe if it's a high emotional piece of content, piece of story that you're sharing in that 1 minute, yeah, maybe you can use, a specific sound, a specific song that is going to add more emotional value and get people invested into it. But, if you're describing things, I guess, again, you can put a lot of sounds, ambience and atmosphere, all that stuff. But if you're just probably giving facts and all that stuff, I would argue that sounds are not that important at that point. And that's where the over-editing can come in and actually kill your video.
To wrap up, I saw a video with, the great Hormozi, where it was actually a presentation that he was doing with one of the conferences that they put. And he was debunking a lot of the myths in content today based on his own research with his incredible growth, right? And it was really fun because he was talking about, entertaining, edutaining, and educating, right? All these three buckets. And his conclusion was there's only two buckets. Is either you entertain or you educate. And he's saying my plan for the next couple of years is going to be education, not even trying to make, because people get confused when you're trying to entertain them versus educating them, and then they don't get the output, and you might be even attracting the wrong audience for your stuff, right? Like, so if you're teaching something, you really want to be actually teaching and providing value in that type of content without many distractions, because you want people to take action, and the people that consume it is a way to filter that and move forward. And I thought it was great because he's showing two examples where one was the same topic, but it was edited and produced in a way that it could pass as entertaining, but all like overproduced, right? This retention editing. And then the other one was him in front of a whiteboard, and the consumption data for the whiteboard was way bigger than the other one, and the intentionality, and also the total views at the end of the day. And they say that video drove more people into their funnel than the other one. And it was super interesting to see, because the perspective sometimes that we see as consumers might not be the right one. So I want to encourage you to go on whatever you're creating, start testing these things. If you feel like something is going to help you, try it out, put it out there in the distribution, and then study what's happening to those things, right? If that's sustainable, if the result is positive, perfect. And if you like the result, right, if it's, very different to what you are doing in the positive way, how can you match your resources to that outcome? Because sometimes it might not be scalable, right? So we have to see those elements. So anyways, we could talk about this all day long. I think it's a solid episode. Hopefully, let us know. Whatever I think, it doesn't matter. Whatever you think, it matters. And
whatever you think matters.
Oh, thank you, bro.
You matter.
Thank you. Tell that to my wife. But anyways, I'm excited that we finally got to record this too. This was a fun one. Let us know if you want more content like this. Anything else, Fonzie?
Nope. Just get it.
Let's get it, guys. With that said, thank you so much for tuning into the Contents Profit podcast. Go ahead and follow the show in your favorite podcasting platforms and on social media at BeastBrosCo.
That is right. If today's episode helped you move one step closer towards your goal and towards better videos, please don't forget to share this episode and leave a 5-star review. See ya.
Bye, guys.